Hello and welcome to the Awakened Life Expo. I'm your host, Carrie Cannon, and right now I'm being joined by Master Mindo. He's an enlightened teacher, famous for his teachings about full consciousness and helping others to reach non-duality, enlightenment, and consciousness of the boundless now.
Humanity is growing. Yes, it's growing. So humanity already has learned how to produce food, but now it needs to learn how to produce food in an ecological, organic way, which doesn't damage other living beings and the nature itself. So the same way humanity is growing in many areas, and some areas are more advancing faster, and the other ones are advancing much slower. Essentially, to understand the current place of humanity and the future, we need to understand the dynamics of consciousness, because consciousness manifests into physical as physical, into thoughts, into plans, and then into actions, and then into physical manifestations. So consciousness has, we could say, three qualities that every single person and the whole humanity have their, we could say, average level of consciousness. And then certain things can be higher and certain things can be lower. Actually, every day, even you, every person shifts up and down every day in their consciousness. But what is important is the average sustainable level of consciousness. So the same way when we look at the world and what's going on right now, that certain areas are advancing quicker, they're progressing quicker, and some areas are still quite stuck, but something healing is happening, we could say, in terms of politics and in terms of international conflicts and in terms of financial systems. Some things are stuck, but some things are moving upward. But if we look at let's say the last 5 years, the last 10 years, and the last 15 years, the average level of advancement is increasing, and that is the good sign.
So would you say that that's how levels of consciousness correlate with governance? Is that...
Yes, exactly, yes. The governments are still functioning in the old-fashioned way, and the systems were put in place some decades ago. So this is why things are no longer working. The current financial system is no longer working. The current economical system is also very interesting what's going on, because everything is shipped out to China, and the US is becoming more indebted. And the whole financial system is a big bubble which is about to change. It's not going to collapse, but it's going to change, because the other systems are already put in place to replace the current financial system. Because the current financial system, I believe in 1970s, it was taken off the real gold standard. And since then, the fiat financial system has boomed, which is basically phony. It's not real. And this is why there are many disbalances right now. So in terms of governing the economics, politics, and every country, it's also designed in a very limited way of the, well, in US particularly, the left and the right. And the opposition is so vast, so big. So there's clearly a separation there, and clearly the old ways are not working anymore, because the whole political arena is now like a movie theater, and people have really no say. And if people even choose one of the two candidates, it's not a choice. They do not represent what people truly want. So actually, politicians now became actors who are simply representing certain interests, and they're no longer listening to the people. And this is why the current system is no longer working, because the new system needs to be based on the common interest, on the common good. So does the new global governance system, which will be put in place very soon, it will be about the common good. It will be about sharing, because the capitalist system of greed and collecting more and more, it doesn't work anymore, while China, the West are rich and all the rest of the world is poor. So first of all, the common good needs to be put in place. We need to recognize that humanity is a family. First of all, that humanity is a family. Religion is actually, by definition in Latin, it means connection. It means connection. So religion is meant to unite, but unfortunately it became the force of wars and conflicts in many cases. So we need to even let go of religions, because they're not working so well. So the common ground needs to be family, realization that humanity is one big family. There is also another family, which are animals. There is another family or kingdom of insects. There is another big family of bacteria, very tiny organisms. There is a family of planets. There is a family of stars. There is a family of galaxies. There is a family of various energy fields in the universe. The whole universe is one big family. So this is why humanity can only advance by modeling the principles of the universe, and not the principles of separation, divide and conquer. That clearly doesn't work anymore. So thus we need to put collective interest first. Sharing is extremely important. Sharing is caring, because the earth has so many resources. It's abundant, isn't it? Look at the moon, it's bare. Look here, it's abundant. So clearly we don't know how to share. And of course we can develop new technologies of sharing, that everybody will have food, and everybody will have housing, and everybody will have income to be sustained. But is that a goal of humanity, to have food, house, and basic income? That is just the basic survival which is needed. And even that is not really achieved right now. The basic survival on a global scale is still not implemented. And that is just the basic physical needs of the living beings on this earth. So that is still not implemented. What is the second step? Once the basic physical needs are implemented, there are emotional and mental, psychological needs. And there is a lot of trauma which will need to be healed. And this truth is already coming out in the alternative media. And this trauma is now being addressed more and more, that these things were traumatic. The wars were traumatic, and the sexual abuse was traumatic on a global scale, and slavery and so forth. So these things are now surfacing in the alternative media and becoming evident. So trauma healing is slowly also beginning, but it's just beginning. And once the psychological, mental, emotional needs are met on a global scale for humanity, what is the next step? The next step is spiritual. It's the inner connection, the spiritual connection, or a higher consciousness connection. So that will be the next step of a global progression of humanity as a whole. And then, of course, we will realize that we have never been alone. That we have never been alone. Humanity has only blocked itself, has only divided itself within itself. So of course it has been separated from the rest of the universe, while in reality it's not the case, because humanity has never been alone, And how do we know that? Well, let's come back to the Bible, that God or gods, maybe that S was removed for some reason, have created human being into the image of themselves or himself. At the same time, if we look at the Sumerian tablets, we will see that gods have engineered human beings, that the previous human beings used to live hundreds or thousands of years. And of course, there's so much archaeological evidence of paintings everywhere, and the temples and pyramids that depict gods and goddesses, and all those myths that there were beings coming from the skies. In simple language, if we refer to Egyptian, Greek mythology, and everywhere really around the world. At the same time, who was Jesus? He was a Messiah. And who is a Messiah? A Messiah is a messenger of God while being one with God as God, we could say so. Buddha means awakened, the one who is awakened, enlightened, in nirvana. So he's a messenger of consciousness, of that universal intelligence. And Krishna and Shiva and so on, and all of these enlightened beings and avatars, messiahs and enlightened beings are the guides who have been steering humanity in the right direction for thousands of years. And without them, humanity would have been truly lost. But we had help, humanity has help all the time. So the enlightened beings were coming back again and again and taking different bodies at different times, again and again, to guide humanity into the right direction. And this is why there are many enlightened beings here today again, actually even more than any other time in the history. And it is our duty to guide humanity into the right direction, to show the example, to shine the light that it is possible, it is doable. And what is that right direction? That we need to take the right course of action.
Okay. So what role does community play in what you perceive to be the evolution of governance and our planetary evolution?
Community is a small definition. The collective is a larger, more important definition. The collective is very important, and the collective needs to stand up and to raise the voice of the collective needs. This model, of course, can be scaled down to a single smaller community. It works exactly the same way. But we should look at the large collective and address the needs of the large collective, which are already have told that the first is the survival needs of the collective, the physical needs of food, housing, and basic income. So that is the large collective need which needs to be met right away. It becomes a lot simpler if we think like that. If we focus on smaller communities, there is a lot of diversity, yes. There is a lot of diversity, a lot of creativity as well, and so many different pathways that small communities can take place. But we should look at humanity as a whole and to realize the collective needs of the whole of humanity. And that's actually a very simple way of looking at it. All the complexities then become so simple.
Okay, so I guess my question relates more to how can one take action? Because if one sees that there are, these global issues,
Yes.
and to try and approach it at a global level, it's just not practical.
Yes.
So that's kind of why I was asking about community, sort of more how can, one from an individual perspective, because I don't actually believe that we are individuals. But but from an individual perspective, which is where most people use their frame of reference and identify the self. So from that perspective of self-identification, how can one, what part do communities play in this? So if one is wanting to make change, how can they make the most effective change in the, within their grasp, I guess, is my question.
The most effective change is to change consciousness, first of all. Because as soon as one changes their consciousness into a higher level of consciousness, all the thoughts, emotions, feelings, actions will be different and will resonate on a higher vibration. So every person has an individual responsibility, first of all, to take care of their vibrational field and their consciousness. Because this is exactly what every single being is manifesting outside, their own vibrational frequency. So the very first step is to take responsibility of oneself. And that's probably what many don't want to hear. Or the other ones who are more mature, they say, I know this, I already know this. But why is it so important? Let's recap. Why is it so important in a practical way? Because as soon as one starts to take care of their own emotional, mental, psychological, and spiritual state, vibrational state, as soon as one starts to take care of them, they're cleansing all the rubbish, all the lower vibrations. Because these lower vibrations which are held, they would still manifest. The law of attraction is one of the laws that is functioning, yes. There are many other laws, but the law of attraction is a very famous one, let's put it this way. So this is why it works, yes. And if one still wishes for something very good, but is holding so much anger, frustration, resistance, anxiety, and fear, it's gonna still come out. It's gonna still manifest as well. So thus, taking care of your own vibrational field, consciousness, emotional, psychological state is the task number one. As the person progresses to a higher level of consciousness, they become the shining light. They become the shining light. And what happens when a shining light comes to a dark room? It illuminates the whole room. So this is why even a single individual awakening, a spiritual awakening or inner light awakening, is so important for the collective consciousness of humanity. So if everyone would focus first of all on their awakening, then in a long run, we would accelerate our positive future 50 times over than first of all focusing on other things. Like earning more money, making more material things, running more businesses, opening a coffee shop, or going, like all other mundane things. So if everybody focuses on their frequency, on their awakening, then that light will transform the whole humanity 50 times quicker in a physical way. And this is exactly how it works.
Can you tell me the role of, so how non-duality plays a role in individuality and individual responsibility?
The non-duality is a new buzzword, and it doesn't imply full consciousness. Non-duality has steps, first of all. Non-duality on the scale of 1000 is measured at 670. And I call it pre-enlightenment, first of all. So what is non-duality? It's pre-enlightenment. It's realization, it's not like this, it's not like that. Maybe there's a whole, and seeing the whole of the yin and yang. That's like a very basics of non-duality. So that is still not enlightenment, it's pre-enlightenment. Enlightenment is the actual awareness, realization of awareness. It's not the non-dual concept. It's not like this or like that, or not like this or not like that. Awareness is beyond all these concepts, all these ideas. And then there are other steps into the full consciousness, into the actual source of all. So non-duality is a new concept, and actually currently on Earth there is less than 1,000 people who are truly at non-duality. So this is why the whole topic of non-duality currently is not very practical, first of all, although many people are interested in a philosophical way. The first interest should be actually to awaken spiritually and not to stuff one's head with the non-dual Advaita Vedanta knowledge. Because I meet so many people who come to me and say, I've been studying non-duality for a few years already. I've been attending some workshops, some retreats and this and that, and I think I'm very good at non-duality. And when we use a scientific method to measure their levels of consciousness, it seems that they are not even spiritually awakened yet, that the whole thing is mental. It's a new philosophy, a new concept. So thus, speaking in a global scale, non-duality is yet too far for common people to realize. Because now there is only 1,000, less than 1,000 people who have true non-dual realization. So I would start maybe first of all, if we speak about common good, to focus on awakening, on the inner light awakening. What do we need to do to awaken the inner light? That's the goal number one. And then we can speak about love, and then we can speak about oneness, presence, and then non-duality comes in.
Okay. From what I understand and where I live, I understand that consciousness lives through me. My eyes, ears, expression, breath, all of that is consciousness. And from that, consciousness is making the choices. It's not an individual perspective that is making the choices.
In a common sense, for the average human people, it's their conditioned mind which is making all the choices.
Okay.
Yes, and that's why we have a big mess on this earth.
Okay.
If everybody would function from the place of consciousness, that would be enlightened civilization already. Unfortunately, humanity is functioning through conditioning, through the pre-programmed mentalities, programs. So consciousness has nothing much to do with that, really. It just allowed life to play out like that. It allowed it, yes. It doesn't resist anything, consciousness. It allowed life to play out like that. But that is very unnatural way. It's very conditioned way. And this is why a natural conditioned way creates suffering. So if I would shout out anything, it would be that.
Okay. All right. So when you're doing your work, you measure the levels of consciousness, and in that metric, it just seems a little bit like, you're saying there's a superiority and an inferiority, which can press a lot of people's buttons. So can you talk about why you use the metrics of the levels of consciousness in your teachings?
Yes, it's a GPS. And when you're on a journey through the ocean of spirituality, it's good to have a GPS. So it's not meant for the ego, first of all. It's not meant to be said, I am at 500s and you are at 300s. No, it's not for ego purposes. It's not either for pushing anybody's buttons, because it's still an ego thing if one's buttons are pushed. It's simply a map. It's neutral. It has no implications. It's a neutral GPS map. If you want to go left, go left. If you want to go right, go right. But the map tells that the journey will take you to the end this way. That's the quickest way. If you want to circle around for a bit in a particular place, do that. It's your choice. It's simply a GPS, a map. It's neither positive nor negative. It's just a map.
I have another question. So in your metric, you use Dr. David Hawkins' levels of consciousness, which ends at 1,000, which is where we understand that Jesus, that's Christ consciousness. Can this planet hold levels of consciousness higher than 1,000? And if it can, do you see people that are above that, or is that kind of the highest metric that we can measure at here?
1,000 realization implies a complete realization and experience of oneself as consciousness, as the self. So that's the realization, and there is nothing more really to be realized, that there is only the self, that there is only consciousness as that. However, integration and energetic advancement does have differences, because there can be a person who has come into a full consciousness realization just now and still very fresh. There can be a teacher who has been integrated for the last 5-10 years. There can be a master who has been many lifetimes before already there and came in this lifetime again and simply has reawakened quickly. There is a level of ascended masters. There is a level of avatars, of which Jesus was one of the avatars as Krishna. There are other levels of higher beings which basically come into the cosmic hierarchy, of which, yes, there are enlightened beings, masters and avatars, and there are various levels of gods. The lower gods, the higher gods, going into the higher dimensions. There are beings who, like for example, in Hindu tradition, there is known as Shiva, Brahman, and Vishnu. And these beings have been here for billions of years. Their intelligence is spanning into billions of years. Basically, they're immortal, and they're representing that intelligence of all the creation. So there are different levels of intelligence beyond the common knowledge of 1,000. 1,000 is realization that yes, you are consciousness, but then there is energetic expansion, energetic integration, which is beyond humanity as such.
Okay, so then what you're saying is once one reaches the level of consciousness of 1,000, then one can expand within that. It's not that growth stops happening at 1,000.
No, it doesn't. Okay. The now never stops.
Okay. So if there was something that you wanted to leave people with, like if you wanted to impart something on people from this talk that I have not had the wisdom to ask you, what would that be?
Yes. In order for you to help the most effectively everyone else, including the whole earth, first of all, it is to take responsibility of your own moment-to-moment emotional, mental, psychological, spiritual, vibrational state. Moment to moment, it is your responsibility to take care of that. By taking care every moment of all your states, emotional, mental, psychological, and so forth, you will be doing the best service to yourself for your awakening, to your whole family and all the people immediately around you, and for the whole earth and for the future of humanity. And to finalize, I would say that a single awakening, all of you, those who are already awakened, you are very important. You are very valuable. You are extremely valuable to all the rest of humanity who are still unconscious, still in the dark. So even by simply being already spiritually awakened, you are already immensely contributing to the humanity and the future, just by being spiritually awakened, because you're already shining that light. And if you dedicate more time and if you become more responsible of all your states as previously mentioned, that will be the best ever possible thing you can do in this life. That's goal number one. And goal number two, you will manifest everything on a higher and higher vibration. So your life will change towards the higher vibration. You may change jobs, you may change relationships, you may change friendships, and everything is gonna spin upwards in the universal vortex of energy. The whole universe is an upward spiral of vibration. So by taking care of your own vibration and aiming at a higher vibration, you will contribute immensely towards individual, collective, planetary, universal evolution on the upward spiral. So this is the single most important advice I can give to one.
Okay. And are you offering a free gift so that people can get in touch with you, that they can connect with you?
Yes. We're offering you a free gift from the New Humanities School, which is a free course about introduction to the levels of consciousness. So it's a very beautiful and very simple introduction. What are the levels of consciousness? Why they're so important? Why understanding of them is so important for your life? And this is the free online course that you can simply receive by clicking the link below. So
Awesome.
that is a free gift, and we also have many upcoming. We have a monthly Zoom meeting. We have upcoming online retreats and physical retreats, which all of those you can find on the New Humanities School website.
Great. Thank you so very much. Master Mindo, thank you so much for being here on the Awakened Life Expo. It's been an honor and a pleasure speaking with you, and I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure to meet you all, and keep shining your light. You're very, very important and beautiful beings.